Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I am your host, Jason Cercone, and today we're going to take a look at 6 podcasting trends to watch for in 2021. Now, what fun would it be to roll into a new year and not zero in on some of the trends taking place in the podcasting universe? Without question, there's a lot happening and a lot of growth unfolding, and whenever something starts to get momentum, the speculation and predictions start to fly. What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? It's something to talk about for sure, and that's what we're going to do here today. Here are 6 podcasting trends to watch for in 2021. Trend number 1, inevitable growth to 2 million plus active podcasts. At the rate in which new podcasts are joining the mix, we may break 2 million active shows by the end of this sentence. As of August 2020, we broke 1 million podcasts. PodcastInsights.com reported that we were over 1.7 million as of early January 2021. So before the summer months are upon us, there should be well over 2 million podcasts available for download in the podcast space. I know I've talked about this a lot on Pod Theory before, but that number is still a small fraction of what you'll find for blogs, social media sites, and YouTube channels out there. This means that while growth is trending up in a big way, now is still the best time to get on board with launching your podcast or getting some positive momentum behind your podcast. Will the number of active podcasts ever reach the level of active YouTube channels? Maybe. It's hard to say, but right now, starting a podcast is a hot trend, and it's time for you and your brand to get on board. But there's one thing you need to remember. As more podcasts come to life, the curve on which you can produce a show with low standards is flattening quickly. And that leads us into trend number 2, which is the ongoing battle among the big players for podcast supremacy. Right now, Apple still reigns supreme, but services like Spotify and Amazon are hot on their tail. You also have iHeartRadio and Google Podcasts and Pandora trying to wrestle the crown away from Apple as well. And while the big guys fighting for the listener's attention may not seem like it impacts you and your podcast, it really does. I came across an incredibly insightful article earlier this week from Evo Terra, the author of Podcast Pontifications, and I'm going to share that with you in the show notes. But in this article, he looks at the battle for the top spot not as a fight that will lead to a new ruler or the continued rule by Apple, but more of a fight that will lead to podcast discoverability falling more into the laps of us producers. And that means it's on me, it's on you, it's on all podcast producers to put our best product forward. Producing a bad podcast will almost instantly mean it'll gain no traction. Having a bad website for your podcast that does not present your show in its best light just won't get the job done anymore. As I mentioned back on episode 48 of Pod Theory, simply dumping a link to your show on social media just won't be enough anymore. While you should keep an eye on the big guys duking it out, keep more of your attention focused on what you can control, which is producing quality content and presenting it in a way that attracts more listeners to your own personal platform. This article is great and you need to check it out. Like I said, I'm going to share a link to it in the show notes so you can check it out when you're done here today. Trend number 3, the continued rise and improvement of long-distance recording methods. I remember making the comment back in May of 2020 that I wish I would have bought stock in Zoom, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who said something like that. And while Zoom wasn't necessarily built for recording the highest quality long-distance podcasts, it certainly worked. And it's helped new services like Riverside and Squadcast gain relevance in the podcasting space too. As we roll into 2021, there's still a lot of uncertainty with the coronavirus, and long-distance podcasting continues to be not only popular, but a necessity. With that, we should see continued improvement and evolution to long-distance recording platforms that will allow us to continue capturing studio-quality audio, as well as clear, sharp video. Trend number 4, advertising revenue will continue to skyrocket. Now, heading into 2020, many experts predicted that podcast ad revenue would break $1 billion. Then, the pandemic happened. But that pandemic led to a surge in podcast listenership, so ad dollars exceeding 10 digits seems like all but a formality in 2021. As reported by PacificContent.com, Wondery founder Hernan Lopez said the last Infinite Dial survey showed that 104 million Americans 12 years old and up listen to podcasts every month, and he predicts we'll surpass 120 million monthly podcast listeners in 2021. More ears equals more reasons for advertisers to focus on the space, so be prepared to see a surge in ad spots on your favorite podcasts. Trend number 5, continued acquisitions. The major platforms like Apple, Amazon, and Spotify will continue to make major pushes into the podcasting space, and they'll do it by continuing to acquire assets around them. The article I shared from Evo Terra talks about Amazon purchasing Wondery, which I mentioned a second ago. And in case you don't know, Wondery is a podcast network that was created in 2016 that rose to very high levels of popularity and usage in the podcasting space, to the tune of gaining a $300 million valuation. Not bad. As the big guys jockey for position, it seems all but inevitable that more acquisitions like this are going to take place. Who knows, we may even see a network like Amazon pay huge money to a Joe Rogan type figure for exclusive rights to their podcast on the Amazon network. There's a lot to watch for in this segment of the podcasting space, and all I can say now is stay tuned. And finally, trend number 6, more companies and brands are going to start using podcasts as their main content strategy and platform for connecting with current and potential customers. I think we've reached a point where we can confidently agree that podcasting has reached a point of powerful mainstream velocity. Think of how ads have evolved over time. They went from providing phone numbers to providing websites to providing social media feeds because that's where they wanted consumers to interact with their brands. Now, brand podcasts will become part of that dynamic as well. The power of a well-crafted, thoughtful, innovative podcast is invaluable to relationship building. Your brand has the ability to be in a person's ear for half an hour, no matter how long the podcast is, all at one time. And in that time, you can be providing solutions, establishing authority, and building trust that leads to long-term loyalty. And listeners can take in these podcasts passively, at home, in the office, or during their commute. 2021 could easily be the year where we see more brands' TV ads end with, "Subscribe to our podcast to learn more." I, for one, cannot wait to hear that. 2021 should be a big year for podcasts, and I'll dip into this more on episode 75 of Pod Theory. But for now, these trends, along with some others that I didn't cover today, should give us plenty to talk about over the course of the next 12 months. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Pod Theory. If you'd like to connect with me and find more content just like this, please visit jasoncercone.com today. Good talk. I'll see you back here tomorrow. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.